Good morning. Good morning. I apologize about the delay this Saturday. We have a lot of good news to share with you, and of course, some bad news, unfortunately. Um, I'm sure this week that here in Washington, D.C., there was a mob of people who followed Trump. I guess some people call them Trumpers, trying to take over the Capitol. And so it was a very embarrassing day of America. And so everyone was watching, of course. I'm sure you were. You've heard of it. But some good news came out of that, and that was that the majority of politicians, elected officials, certified the electoral votes so that President elect Biden is officially the president starting on January 20th, 2021. Despite everything you heard on news, it was a lot of political drama that we all probably heard for the first time. And so that's good news for us. In addition to that, it's also wonderful news that the two now senators, elected senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, were elected in their respective runoff elections in the state of Georgia. And so that means that the total Senate senators for Democrats is 50, and the total senators for Republicans is 50 also. And that means there's a tiebreaker, and that is Vice President elect Kamala Harris. So that means a lot of progressive. I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, there's a lot on the agenda, but normally, even President Obama, last term, last 2 terms, I mean, he wasn't able to pass everything that he wanted. Of course, like immigration, for example, he focused most of his time on healthcare, which is understandable. It's very important as well. So it's great news. Good morning. This is our first live stream, actually. And so, of course, the first one, I was a bit late to my own scheduling. So, but today we want to talk about mostly the asylum rule. And just a couple days ago, last night, that's why we're having this live stream. We want to share this news as soon as possible with you, especially for those who are seeking asylum. And so the Northern District of California Judge Donato, he granted a preliminary injunction nationwide, saying that the asylum rule that was going to make it more difficult for asylees seeking status, that is blocked. And it's very helpful. It's not one of the, I know people were, a lot of applicants were concerned about like the work permit rule that started back in August. But this other rule that was blocked yesterday, is even more serious. It would have expanded the definition of a frivolous application. Frivolous meaning a fake application. So, to give you some background here, some context, in June 15th, 2020, Department of Homeland Security and Department of Justice, which includes the Attorney General and the immigration court system, which we call Executive Office of Immigration Review, they published a notice of rulemaking. So it kicks off the process to say that, okay, the public has this much time. Normally it's 60 days to provide a comment. And I actually remember last year, 2020 in the summer, that I made a comment about this rule because, of course, it was a very ridiculous, egregious rule that they would have taken effect actually January 11th on Monday, this coming Monday. And in this situation, I guess the government was trying to get certain people to sign off on it. So they had even Attorney General back then, William Barr, to sign off on it. But the judge, Donato, he said that that didn't make sense. That would basically, well, I infer he said that, but basically that it didn't make it even more. It did not make this rule any more better, just because he signed off on it as well. Uh, which, by the way, it does give you an idea, a sense of how immigration law can feel that is stacked up against you, because Department of Justice, like, as I said before, is the court system, and which involves the judges, immigration judges, where the Department of Homeland Security, if you have experienced court before for immigration, Department of Homeland Security is to our side, our left side. And so you have the judge in front of you and the Department of Homeland Security next to you. It doesn't work like that where you have, it seems like two sets of agencies against you in a regular court setting. The judge is supposed to be impartial. And so in this situation, fortunately, the judge who is impartial, Mr. Judge Donato at a Northern District of California, agreed with the immigration groups, the immigration nonprofits, who were the plaintiffs, that this rule could not move forward. So the court actually in this situation moved pretty quickly. They because the applications for a restraining order and preliminary injunction were filed just a couple weeks ago. And that's normally what happens, right? I mean, that's always what happens. If they know a certain rule is supposed to go in effect, judges have to make a decision pretty quickly. So this is what it would have done specifically. It would have brought in a definition, expanded definition of frivolous, so meaning fake. And so I'm sure you heard President Trump was trying to really prevent people from applying in general, not just asylum. Well, you definitely knew about asylum, that he was doing that because he forced people. He created another rule before to migrant protocol to send people to Mexico to wait there while waiting for their court hearing. But anyway, back to this. And he was trying to expand the definition of frivolous to mean that basically if there was current case law that, let's say you had hired a lawyer and your lawyer was relying on certain cases and to include in their brief explanation, for example, which is what should be done, then if that case for some reason was overturned, then this judge over your case can basically say, well, you use that old case law and no, you were going to call that frivolous, which is ridiculous because, I mean, first of all, right now, which they just updated, I believe, but usually before the rule was you had 15 days before to file all your evidence and brief. But now they're going to make it, I believe, 30 days before your court hearing. So and you just never know. Law, as you know, this past 4 years especially, law changes practically every day. So that's why we have content for you almost every day. Let's see here. It also would have expanded the circumstances that a immigrant would have been barred. For example, certain crimes. They would have expanded the number of crimes that would make someone not eligible anymore. Even if it was a simple misdemeanor, people call it. And a lot of these claims are, of course, legitimate. A very high majority. Everyone that's come to my office, for example, I personally believe it to be true. But of course, we have to, as attorneys, we have to explain to the client, the potential client, it's a high standard, and it keeps getting higher because of rules like these. So fortunately, this judge basically stopped it. That's what he did. Also, this rule would have pre-terminated the application. What this means, I guess it's their fancy word of saying, or I think it's a Latin word, saying that if you don't file the application, there's already a 1 year rule, right? From time you enter the U.S. That's very, very important. A 1 year rule. So, so if you don't file within the 1 year rule, you won't be eligible for asylum. You can still file the application. It would be called something else, a different type of application. That's called um, withholding of removal. So the standard is just as difficult, but with withholding removal, you cannot apply for a work permit. You can only do that if you apply through asylum. So you have to file within the 1 year. So there's already that. Want to share that context. So there's already that rule, and so basically, this rule would have also rejected this application early on if without a court hearing. So you're not being able to exercise your due process, your right to be there and defend your case. So that would have been very egregious. So now I want to tell you exactly how the judge was able to say that he could block this rule, and it was actually very simple. He relied on Homeland, the Federal Vacancies Act and the Homeland Security Act to say that Acting Secretary Chad Wolf was not actually the acting secretary. He did not have authority to create these rules to begin with, which is the same situation for the other cases that were against the government, basically, that ruled against the government. So and so it was basically the order of the succession plan after Christian Nielsen resigned. Then it was supposed to be someone else after her. They said Krebs. I actually haven't heard of his name. That's probably because maybe Trump didn't think he was going to be able to enforce any laws or create new policies against immigrants. He probably stood up for that. I'm just assuming, because there must have been a reason why he was not the next person in line. So after Christian Nielsen, they had Kevin McClellan, and then he had changed the order to have Chad Wolf, who originally, I talked about a video on this from this past 4 to 6 months about exactly this order situation. And Chad Wolf was working for FEMA. So if you live in the United States, you may be familiar with FEMA, especially after there's been a hurricane. That's the Emergency Management Agency. So kind of strange how someone from there would be running Department of Homeland Security. So maybe he was just telling President Trump that he would do things like this. But in a way, I kind of think maybe Christian Nielsen, this is my theory, if she knew all this, you would think people in the government know that you can't just change the reordering. So anyway, maybe someone a couple steps before, like Christian Nielsen, knew that this is the way to nullify any of these potential rules. She actually stood up against Trump. It took a while, but she stood up against Trump when he wanted to take on more egregious rules like this. Let's see here. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining. And let us know where y'all are coming from, where you're listening from. Really appreciate you joining on. And have to drink some coffee these days, especially when there's so many new things going on with immigration. Even though President-elect Biden is now officially he has been certified this past couple of days ago. So we'll provide more content about that on what he plans. We already have a video on that from a couple weeks ago, but there's more. There's always more news coming out about it. In fact, there's one thing I can share right now, and that is his the cabinet secretary for Department of Homeland Security that he's appointing, Mr. Mayorkas. He was the one that created the DACA program. So that's already a good start. DACA is I'm sure you know, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, basically the work permit for quote unquote dreamers. I say quote unquote because people use the word dreamers a lot. They say Dreamer Act and to associate that with DACA, but it's not a law. It's more of a it's an executive order. And as you've seen this past couple of years, Trump administration tried to get rid of that. And based on the reliance to the public, of course, since 2012, they were not able to get rid of that. It was pretty close, but again, I don't know what's going on. The Trump administration, you probably know better than I do, but it's just it's chaos in there. So I'm sure the traditional government people that work in there, they knew what they were doing. So maybe that was one way they just bypassed some things on purpose so that the DACA couldn't go away. Who knows? But other good news we want to share with you, if you're still joining us, the courts have actually stopped. They blocked the rule for the increase of fees for USCIS applications. So that is wonderful news. That is wonderful, wonderful news because the N400 for example, N400 for someone to become a U.S. citizen, that application right now is, I believe, $725, but the fee increase rule would have taken that up to about, I believe, $1,200. So pretty ridiculous amount. And asylum applications would have gone from $0 to, I believe, $50. So I know it doesn't sound like much, but for asylum seekers, you take it as what it is, as the word asylum, asylee seekers, presumably they don't have money. They're fleeing persecution. They're fleeing the threats of persecution. So I thought that was that is obviously another barrier that President Trump was trying to place a burden on applicants. But anyway, that rule doesn't take effect anymore, so thank goodness. And so that's a wrap. That's what we have for you today, this Saturday morning at 9:30. We'll bring more fresh content for you. We'll try to do that on a daily basis, but if not, it'll be every other day at this point. And also stay tuned with our channel. Subscribe if you're new to our channel. Please join our Facebook group. It's called Immigrant Guide and Support Living in America. I'll add that here on the bottom for you so you can take a look at that. So join our Facebook group. It's a great community where people share their challenges and successes so we can all learn from each other. To be honest, I don't know everything. Lawyers share information with each other all the time. So this is a great community also, so that even when you obtain status after that, you'll have a better understanding of maybe where to live, things like that. Also, please share this video with your friends and colleagues. If you know someone that could be going through an immigration problem, consider us as your immigration problem solver. That is what we call ourselves because that's the role that I feel that I'm serving in. There's a lot of problems within immigration, of course, just the system itself. And so we find a strategy to help our clients, immigrants, guide them to live and work in America legally. So anyway, if you're new to our channel, please subscribe down below. I greatly appreciate it. And anyway, have a wonderful Saturday. We'll talk to you soon.